There are many lifestyle choices presented as being healthy and reasonable lifestyle choices that people can adopt. As Muslims, when we witness the behavior and the type of actions many people are recommending to be useful and healthy actions for us to have in our lives, we need to address it and look at it and see whether there is a truth or not. There's a wide discussion on whether vegetarianism or veganism is something that is allowed and acceptable in Islam Ahlul Bayt. To adopt a life where one becomes abstemious from all types of meat, from anything that is produced from the animal kingdom, in addition to its byproducts and whatnot, is this something that is found within Islam Ahlul Bayt or no? And with respect to vegetarianism, barring veganism, ultimately Islam has presented its dietary system. And indeed, a dietary system for the average person would be very suitable in that we do not make our stomachs, according to the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the wise words of Imam Ali, لا تجعلوا بطونكم مقابر للحيوانات. Do not make your stomach cemeteries for animals, as well as not going and allowing over 40 days without consuming some sort of protein from the animal kingdom and whatnot. However, many people might find that difficult because sometimes subjectively a person cannot, without any pun intended, swallow some of these foods out there. Whether they have a reaction, whether they're just unable to consume, how would they fall into these sort of decisions and that type of lifestyle choice? In that situation, to adopt a life of veganism or vegetarianism would seem ideal. But on the other hand, we do see the traditions and the books of literature highlighting the importance of every now and then, occasionally, taking and consuming meat. Of course, Islam is a comprehensive worldview and lifestyle. If something cannot suit you, you are not obligated to go and continue pursuing it. God has made it very clear. In faith, there is no compulsion. How about in lifestyle choices? Although there isn't any single lifestyle element except that faith, our worldview, has addressed. You're not a perfect religion unless you address everything that life has to offer. With respect to this issue, if you find yourself unable to continue living what the books of tradition and the ahadith recommend us to live our lives with, whether it is going 40 days without consuming meat being something not recommended, or consuming meat often, whether there are certain foods that are considered mustahab to consume above others. There are opinions that the countless consumption of beef would be considered deplorable, reprehensible, makruh. However, lamb is considered decent and fine to consume. All of these are recommendations. You know yourself best. Your health is prioritized. With respect to veganism, however, one would see that vegetarianism is almost a preface or like an intro to completely taking a life of maintaining no contact, no consumption, abstaining from all forms of meat and its byproduct. That would include honey, that would include milk. With regards to Islam Ahlul Bayt, that would definitely be considered an extreme, albeit considering your relative subjective circumstance. Maybe there are health reasons. Maybe there are excuses that are concerning to you but don't concern anyone else. But can we just willingly and voluntarily just avoid all of these things? You can do whatever you want to do. It's your life. The faith will recommend, no, consume these things. For not only do they have a physical benefit, there are spiritual benefits. There is a lovely book called Tib Amir al-Mu'mineen, or The Medicine of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the prince and the commander of the faithful, by Sheikh Hassan al-Jawahiri, that denotes traditions, a bunch of ahadith from the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen on the spiritual benefits of certain foods, whether they are pomegranate or meats like fish and whatnot. There are spiritual benefits to consuming these things, although in moderation, however. Just because something is recommended to consume. For example, when we break our fasts, We all understand the lovely the advice of recommendation from Rasulullah: consume it a date before you begin breaking your fast. All of this, these are recommendations. If you cannot handle, that's fine. You are not obligated to go ahead and every single mustahab and makruh and wajib and haram, you have to 100% find yourself implementing at all times. Although highly recommended, definitely, but these are being recommendations for us to consider and to adopt in our lives. That being said, not only do we have physical benefits, health benefits, definitely with some of these foods that we can consume, there are also spiritual benefits. We find in works, we find in narrations, whether we break our fast with a date, consuming plenty of water, and the etiquette of what happens when we finish consuming our food, washing the hands after and even before we consume. There is one piece of advice that many will give right before people consume food. Many of us might have seen this behavior happen, where individuals will take a piece of salt, consume it, then they will eat food. Is this something found in our traditions? And even after they finished consuming their lunch or dinner or whatever, then they will take another pinch of salt and eat that. Yes, it is found in the sense of the Holy Prophet of Islam or the Imams of Ahlul Bayt behaving in this manner, but that's only because of their society being a very hot desert climate, that it would be recommended to consume some salt because you might not have that readily accessible with regards to the food that is available in such a situation. So is it recommended? Not necessarily in all cases, but depending on where you were. So we find other examples. We might read, for example, the Holy Prophet would apply sort of a sunblock, that if you've ever seen athletes, they would apply sunblock in the form of like black marks, whether they are football players and whatnot, to help block away from the sun. And this would be described as kuhla, or like a type of eyeliner. Does that then mean we apply that wherever we go? No, it's circumstantial based on your area and location, as is the case of consuming salt before we eat. That's why we might hear people say this is from the practices and teachings of the Prophet. You do it. Practices and teachings given if you are found in that society. Otherwise, if it's not necessary, then it's not going to be necessary. This will then act as a balance for the imbalances that a person goes through and endures when they find themselves in such a circumstance. Otherwise, the Islamic dietary system is very simple. Obviously, the consumption of a plenty amount of water is something that is definitely found. In addition to that, do not make your stomach cemeteries to animals, but do not deprive that stomach from over 40 days without consuming something from the world of the animal kingdom as well. Then in addition to that, if a person is interested, there are recommended things to consume. There are things that are considered not recommended to consume. Question: what would be something that is halal but not necessarily recommended to consume? Whenever what you are going to consume would have been best used and placed in a different situation. So for example, horses. Considering that, yeah, they are halal, but it wouldn't be seen as recommended to consume. Why? Their use is best found elsewhere, and the likes and such on. So we do find recommendations, and we do find areas where we are told to abstain from in consuming. All of this is found in the works. Ultimately, it is your choice to live however you want to live. Do not be extreme, is the basic understanding on how we should adopt our dietary systems, and so on and so forth. Find that balance. Do not go on one end too far with completely making your lifestyle 100% a meat-centric lifestyle, and do not go completely without at least finding something from the animal kingdom, as these are beneficial from a health perspective as well. Experts will recommend this type of approach. Making sure that you are fit and able and have that energy to continue on your day. If you can find alternatives depending on your subjective situation, say for example, if you cannot stomach certain things that are recommended from both a health perspective and an Islamic perspective, albeit always reminding each other that the Islamic perspective will always be in par with the health expert perspective at all times, then there are definitely alternatives out there. In the end, we can find whatever lifestyle we want to adopt with regards to our dietary system. Islam has laid out its guidelines, and depending on your relative circumstance, you approach it as you see fit, and maintaining all of these balances. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.